Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Helt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast. This week, my guest is Cliff Goins, and he is an accomplished investor and business leader focusing on empowering small and medium-sized businesses to scale into large enterprises. And he is the co-founder of Scale Up. Welcome, Cliff.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited for this conversation. One of my absolute favorite subjects to dissect. So I'm looking forward to spending some time with you.
Great. Appreciate that. So, Cliff, before you started Scale Up, give us your backstory.
Sure. I like to always say I have a very eclectic background. But the through line is I a finance, strategy, and operations guy. But I spent a lot of time with small businesses and medium enterprises and private equity backed businesses. And I spent probably half of my career with large scaled businesses like your American Express of the world or Northern Trust or Amazon. And so I think I have a really good understanding of what a fully scaled business looks like and also what it's like to be on the journey to scaling. And so that's kind of my background, but mostly in services businesses. So been in financial services, been in marketing services, been on the investment side of the ledger, been on the operations side of the ledger. And so feel like I have a really good grasp of the full picture. And that's why kind of doing what I'm doing now, which is trying to help other folks.
So what motivated you to start Scale Up?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I am a co-founder for a reason. One of my really good friends was actually working at Amazon during the pandemic. He's one of my fraternity brothers, but he was a gentleman I actually hadn't talked to and hadn't caught up with in a few years. I actually didn't know he had moved over to Amazon. And I reached out to him, and he's like, "Hey, you should pray for me. I have a this opportunity here at Amazon." And I was like, "Well, what's the opportunity?" And he explained what the opportunity was. And at that time, he was really focused on how we can help essentially Black-owned and diverse-owned SMBs scale. What he found was if you looked at, we kind of drew a line at companies that do $100 million or more in revenue, so pretty large companies. We want to say, well, how many of those businesses are actually Black owned? And what we found was less than 100 of them in the States, which is less than 1% of those size businesses in the States. And so we got around this question like, what would it look like if we could create more large scaled, in that case, Black owned businesses? We've since kind of morphed to mostly just helping not only Black owned businesses, but other diverse owned as well as other small businesses. But that was the genesis of it. And it started inside of Amazon as a big idea, if you will.
Oh, that's pretty cool. What are some of the common barriers that you're seeing, these businesses have when they're trying to do that scale up?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We talked a little on the pre-call. Some of it is just getting out of your own way. To your point, we talked a little earlier about some businesses where you have experts who really have built up a nice business. They're really good at their craft. They're actually successful business people. And a lot of times what's missed is how, in order to actually multiply what I'm doing, I actually need more people. I need to trust more people to do more things. And I need to be okay with them not doing it the way that I would do it. So the number one thing that we see, and this is common across, I mean, for example, I worked in a business that was a $40 million business revenue wise. Same problem. Same problem. So this is not just even for micro businesses, but it's the problem of, hey, How do I actually make sure I'm spending my time on the things that I most can impact? And then how do I find, train, bribe people, right, to come in and work on some of these other things that the business still needs to grow, but that I really shouldn't be spending my time on. And how do I actually identify that? And so it's really getting to a point where you're willing to do that. Some people don't want to do that, and that's fine. You probably don't want to scale your business. But if you really do want to scale your business, the first thing is the art of kind of getting out of the way. And yeah, that's a very emotional journey, but people who are willing to take that journey start to unlock growth opportunities.
I think, something that you said in there, trust. It's
Hmm.
hard when it's your baby, no matter how ugly it is. And trusting someone else to do stuff and being able to let go of things that you're doing and be able to delegate that to somebody else to do, because we always feel that they're not going to do it as well as I do. And
Yes.
lots of times they may go about it a different way than you do. How do you help these business owners overcome that? Because to me, that could be that's a huge stumbling block.
Yeah, I mean it's probably the key to unlocking growth. I mean, certainly we can talk about financials and investors and all the different things, going to raise money, all those things, but the people thing is actually the thing. How do we help? I mean, it's a journey. So some of it is just helping people realize and embrace the fact that it's a journey. I think also helping people realize that it's actually normal. It's normal to not want to let go of something that you have built and made precious in whatever way you made it. Um, I think the other thing is then helping people or challenging people on the premise that folks can't do things that they would do. Um, and then helping people really actually just pick a lane, pick one thing that you think you might possibly be willing to give up. And then how do you then say, here are the 10 things that I think someone needs to do this well, and figure out some kind of process, some procedure, and then test it out. Because you can always take it back. And so we try to just walk people through that. And then once you've actually tested it, most of the times, you actually realize, to your point, yep, they don't quite do it how I would do it, but it's actually done.
Right, right,
And it's done, and I didn't have to do it.
right.
And so it's getting people to a point where they can embrace some kind of test that gives them the experience to say, okay, yep, now I can do this. And so that's kind of our thought process as we think about that.
I think many times as business owners, we look at something and we're like, okay, well, I can do this so much faster than somebody else. So just let me do it. And it's like, you're right, we probably can, but think about whatever that task is. Yes, it may take Sally twice as long to do it as it would me, but I can generate way more income with that time that I'm spending doing that. And, and again, I went through this, before and have talked to lots of business owners about it and trying to make that shift. And I mean, it's a huge mental block and
Yes.
trying to get us to get out of our own damn way. And it's like, so sometimes I think about going back and writing another book and just call it Getting Out of My Own Damn Way.
I
Um,
like that title. Let's make it happen. You need a
um,
co-author? I'll help
there
you
you
write that one.
go. Um, you have worked with a lot of different, businesses and helping them scale up and things like that. And we talked about that you work with a lot of minority businesses and that there is, um, I'm going to say that shortage of those businesses that are at that higher level. Um, I know personally, there's a lot of the small businesses that are minority owned and a lot of them do struggle finding financing.
Yes.
How do you help them accomplish that? Because to me, from what I've seen from my side, that's probably, their number one problem with scaling their business.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Specifically, if you start talking about minority-owned businesses, there certainly is an access to capital issue. I think if you think about some of the narratives in the market, um, you would think that that really is the issue. I think what we found is access certainly is an issue. That's been a historical issue just in the States. What we found more and more in the last few years is it also has been about really understanding what type of capital you need and when you need it. And so, for example, and we talked a little bit about this on the pre-call. We're working with an entrepreneur now who has built out a little bit of a software business within their business,
Mhm.
and they're trying to figure out how do we actually turn this into a product that we can actually sell. But as we were talking through the conversation, it was clear that they weren't sure what their target audience was in terms of where they needed to go raise money. And so we had to kind of work through that. And it wasn't necessarily, in that case, access to capital issue. It was more like, what type of capital do I go after? I think if you talk specifically about minority-owned businesses, there are certain entities now who focus on impact investing. So you could look at some of those impact investors or funds. There are places there's the BlackRock Impact Opportunities Fund. There's Fifth Century Partners, which is a private equity group here out of the Chicago area. There's a group called the Copia Group, which is a private debt group out of the Chicago area, but they all focus on how do we level up minority-owned businesses through capital. There's also a good movement within kind of the CDFI space. Now, there we go with our acronym soup,
Yeah.
Community Development Financial Institutions. These are folks who also are very mission focused and very focused on leveling up minority entrepreneurship. So those might be other places to look, specifically again for small business owners who are in the minority space. And then at the end of the day, the most important capital is social capital. And so some of it is really just about how do we kind of expand networks for Black-owned business owners, Hispanic-owned business owners, Asian American-owned business owners. And so we do a lot around helping build out networks around investors. So that to me that those are ways, and some of those are you translate to all small businesses. But specifically, like to your point, I do a lot of work in the minority business space.
Yeah. I think one of the things, even in a smaller level, are your economic development corps in the different, here in Maryland, in each one of the
Yes,
counties,
they
there's
all have chambers of
economic development.
commerce. They all, yes,
Yeah,
correct.
and that's
Mm,
that's another place that lots of times there are a lot of grants that are there that, I mean, they're begging people to apply for them because they don't have anybody applying for them, and they have this money to give away.
correct.
I've seen that quite a bit, especially, through the pandemic and things like that. Um, where are you seeing financial education? Because again, they're not teaching it in the schools anymore. And then even when you go to college, I mean, there's still, unless you're going to, I'm going to say more of a community college that are offering those types of certificate programs. I mean, I went to college as for my accounting degree, and I didn't have any classes that were truly, hey, this is how you run a business.
Correct.
So it seems like our financial literacy of the business owners and stuff like that, it's all just because they've learned it as they've gone, and nobody's really taught that to them. I mean, do you guys have anything that you're doing before you help somebody scale up? Do you have some type of a financial program that you have them going through?
Not really. I mean, I think what one of the things we do early on is we'll walk them through the different types of capital. right? So that's just one example. So we may do some walk through what we'll call workshops
Okay,
as we go along. Um, Quite frankly, there, at least for minority entrepreneurs, there are several organizations out that do programming. There's the National Minority Supplier Development Council, NMSDC. See, another more acronyms. There's what's known as WeBank, which is the Women's Business Enterprise. So I'm going to mess up the actual name.
right.
Networking Council or something like that. So there are a few organizations out there who actually have partnered with financial institutions. JP Morgan Chase is one who will sponsor folks into essentially intensive classes around business ownership, financials, and growth planning. And so we typically will connect folks to those types of existing programs versus putting on programming ourselves. That's usually our approach. But there are some groups out there that kind of put on what you would call more business literacy, financial literacy for small business owners, and we try to connect people to those.
Yeah, I think that I think there's a gap. There are the business coaches that are out there that unfortunately you get like an hour of their time per week and then they give you a
That's it.
task to do and then but the people don't understand what the task is, and the business coach tries to talk over their head, and it makes it very difficult lots of times because so many people are, I'm going to say, tax based, and the fact that that's all they're worried about is what taxes am I going to pay at the end of the day. And I try to tell people, really, you gotta, depending, just like you're saying, the type of capital that you want. Same thing with this. It's like, your P&L tells you certain things, your balance sheet tells you
Tells you
something
certain
else.
things. That's
There's
right.
all types of different things that you can use to help see. And as business owners, we need to learn that. And I'm sure that you guys, when you're working with these companies, have dealt with people that understand their numbers and other ones that don't understand their numbers. Uh,
Correct.
is there Are there any specific metrics that you guys use to help these people as they're trying to scale their business?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things in that question. In terms of specific metrics, I think the way that we try to think about it is we think every business has at least one or two forward-looking metrics that they should be tracking, maybe every day, but at least probably every week. A lot of times, where do you find this? It's usually kind of in your some kind of sales pipeline information, some kind of, maybe you can couple that with some historical information around close rate. But these are places, it might be just your service schedule. To your point, we talked a little bit about some of the blue collar businesses. Like it may just be your service schedule. How full is your forward-looking schedule, and how does that kind of compare to the future? But something that gives you an idea of what your business might look like in the future. And you always want to be tracking to that. It actually is different for most businesses, but like I said, a lot of times it has something to do with how it will impact your future sales. So that might be backlog, might be pipeline, might be just, but you really should be tracking that if you're a business owner all the time, right? Then to your point, there are very fundamental things you should just understand about your business when the reports come in. They are backwards looking reports, but you talked about them. They're your essentially your basic financial statements, right? Your P&L, for me, the key metric there is always gross margin. Certainly, there are a bunch of other things you can look at. But gross margin, I've actually run the math on this. Like the gross margin is really your main predictor of profitability. No matter what you decide to do with the money, once you get through the gross margin, if you're, playing games so you don't have to pay taxes, all those different things, gross margin is really where you want to focus to me. Um, the second thing to me, though, is at the end of the day, if you don't have cash, you risk going out of business. And so you really want to understand your cash flow metrics. How much cash are you actually generating from the operation? I love to look at cash flow from operations, right? Are you actually generating positive cash? And then obviously you want to be looking at your daily cash positions, right? So that would be the second thing around just your financial statements. And yeah, it certainly is important to kind of know what's happening on your balance sheet, right? What do you owe? what's coming due and things of that nature. But I think if you can really focus in on forward-looking metric, gross margin,
Right.
and then what's your cash situation, however you want to measure that. I think you're in a good, you can find yourself in a good position. And here's the thing, you don't have to be a CPA to do that.
Correct.
You don't have to be a
100%.
CPA to do that.
100%.
And so, yeah,
So you talk about gross margin. I talk about it all the time, try to help people understand. Give us your definition of gross margin.
yes. So obviously, it's different if you have a product business or a service business, but the concept is actually pretty much the same, which
Right.
is you generate sales. There are some very direct costs that you have that to generate those sales. Most of the times, those are either sometimes people put their salespeople in there, but sometimes they don't. But there might be salespeople because they're directly tied to specific sales. There are definitely any people that you have performing the direct service for the customer. And then it would be any cost kind of related to that. You might have parts that you're selling. You might actually just be selling something, right? So any some kind of inventory, right? If you're selling inventory directly to customers, that those costs will go there. And then anything related to that, freight, all those different things that you would have to, your discounts will go in there, all those things, right? And that spits out once you subtract those costs from your revenue, that spits out your gross profit, which then you translate into gross margin, which is the percentage definition of that. And that metric exists in every single business,
Yes,
software
yes.
business, toy business,
Yep.
HVAC business, all of the businesses. And so, and again, I'm a nerd. I'm a finance nerd. I actually ran a regression on this back in the day. It is your highest predictor of profitability. And if you don't get your gross margin right, your pricing right, you are going to price yourself out of business.
Yeah, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Many times, as the CPA, I see people's books that have come to, and they don't have that broken down. They just kind of they have the sales and then they have everything else. And it's just like, and we try to talk about the same thing. We're not business coaches, but try to say, hey, look, let's figure this out. Because if you're not showing a profit, why is it that you're not showing a profit? Is it because you're not charging enough and so forth? And if you don't have
Right.
your P&L broken down that way, how are you able to look, like you're saying, that forward looking, it's like, you know, going back and checking your estimate to compare it to actuals and stuff like that. And if you're not doing these things, you're you got to know your numbers. And I mean,
Sure.
and that's
Sure.
that's your whole way of predicting. And I'm sure if they know their numbers and they're talking to you about scaling up, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier because then they know, okay, if I'm a service business and I have a truck that has two people in it, I know what my cost is.
That's
Then
right.
you're able to easily help them decide, okay, hey, this is what we need to do to scale that business up. Um, one of the whole reasons why I got into the accounting side of things is numbers don't lie. They are what they
The
are.
numbers
And it's
don't
just
lie.
like, we can manipulate them all different ways, but the numbers are the numbers. I think that many times people don't think about the cash flow. And, I think what's the thing? It's 85% of all businesses go out of business in the first 5 years because they're undercapitalized.
That's right. That's right.
So they try to go in and start up that business without having the proper capitalization. But then their cash, if they're not collecting, it's great you're billing out all of this stuff, but if you're not collecting that money,
Doesn't matter. Your
yep,
P&L could look great. It might look
exactly.
fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Um, I try to tell my clients, it's like, okay, when you're done with that job and you've given the customer the invoice or whatever it is, you've just now lost all your leverage. So you have no leverage to collect that anymore. Um, in something like that, I mean, because I'm sure that you don't want to necessarily help somebody get more capital to be able to scale up if they can't take care of that side of it. It's kind of like having a boat with a hole in and you're trying to bail
Sure.
out, but now that
That's
hole
right.
keeps getting bigger.
That's right.
How how do you guys, help people? I mean, because obviously once they get scaled up, you want to be able to see them continue to succeed because they're taking on debt or they're taking on investors. How do you help them, you know, manage that side of things and be able to stay successful?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, a lot of our role is about getting them connected to the right resources at the right time. And so, as you know, life and business is all a journey. And you need certain things along certain parts of the journey. And so we really try to help them identify kind of where they are in the journey and then get them to the right resources, right? At some point, you hit a threshold where you need a controller. And then at some point, you hit a threshold where you actually need somebody that's more of a CFO type.
Yeah.
And then, and at some point you hit a threshold where you need a whole finance team. Okay. And so we just try to make sure people kind of understand where they are on that journey and get them to the right resources. That's kind of the best. And it took for us when we even came up with the idea of scale up, it was really about, well, yeah, we could go, hire 50 people and start a consultancy and just go help businesses, or we can leverage technology and connections to actually get them to the right people at the right time. And so we decided to go that route so that we could actually do what we're trying to do at scale. So that's our approach.
That's pretty important there because what you're talking about is you guys are matchmakers.
We are
Is
matchmakers. We
really
are very much.
what it looks like. And I know over my years, it's like just sometimes you're in the right place at the right time with the right people, and
That's right.
that's what so much of it comes down to. Um, we could keep talking about this for hours. This is
Oh, absolutely. I told you this
I
when we
think
started.
both.
I told you this is one of my absolute favorite subjects.
Exactly. I think both of us talk the same language here. We could definitely geek out on this for a while. Um, Tell me, Cliff, what have I not asked you wish I had?
Well, it's interesting as we were working through some of the pre-call stuff, you were like, what would you say to people like that are just trying to crack the code? And I actually realized, at the end of the day, the best thing you could really do is activate your network and actually do it like today, this
Right.
week, right? If you're in a position to help someone, why don't you make an introduction, right? Or send a recommendation or give somebody a testimony or something that would help them move forward. And if you're in the market for advice or support, I would say don't just ask for, support, but you really want people who will be in your corner. So you really need advocates. And so do you need a specific introduction to a certain network? If you are trying to get, say, smarter on business financials, do you have somebody who can recommend you to someone to help you just talk through some things, right? Because at the end of the day, as you know, what you know is certainly important. You have to have some level of competency, but ultimately, I mean, you just alluded to it in your last comment. Is really about kind of who you know and where, are you in the right spot at the right time, if you really want to accelerate what it is that you believe you're doing. That's how we grow wealth. And as you know, I wrote a book on closing the wealth gap, right? And that's how you close the gap. It's really through these networks. And certainly the networks have resources that might be capital. And so in terms of financial capital, but a lot of times it's social capital. And that's one of the things what we found, and that I found even in writing my book, that, our communities are just lower on the social capital standings. And so we can continue to just try to connect. Again, that's why we have a whole kind of platform built around connections.
I think most business owners want to help other business owners.
Sure.
And I think that lots of times, I look at it, I mean, in my, whatever, 5 mile area, I want to say there's like 75 CPAs. And it's just like, but I don't look at them as competition because there's enough business to go around for all of us. And it's just a matter of, hey, if I can help somebody out, I'm going to try to help them out, type thing. And I think that's how most business owners think. So to your point, reach out to the network that you have and ask for help. I mean,
Yes.
I think a lot of business owners would take somebody on as a mentee
Oh, sure.
and
Yes.
stuff like that. I think that's something that's really important. So,
Yes.
Cliff, if people like what they hear, they want to talk to you more, they want to learn more about Scale Up, how can they reach you? Where can they find you?
Yes, two places. One, I'm available on LinkedIn, Cliff Goinsforth. You can find me pretty easy that way. And then also Instagram, it's I'm Cliff Goinsforth. So at I am Cliff Goins IV. Yeah, you can catch me there. And yeah, I would love to connect. So if you want to reach out, feel free to do so.
Great. Really appreciate the call today. I enjoyed our conversation.
Yes, thanks for having me on, Gary. This was a lot of fun.
Sure. Hey, this week my guest was Cliff Goins, and he is the co-founder of Scale Up, and I'll see you guys next week.